This episode may contain adult themes and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised.
Sorry.
What's the trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to the Film Critic and the Common Man podcast. While other film podcasts might play computer chess, we eventually get fed up and destroy the computer. Every episode, we discuss a film from the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of the common man. We may not agree, but it certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller. I write about films for my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks, and I'm a member of the North Texas Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics. You can hear me guest on other pods as the David Thewlis of podcasting. I'm joined by my brother and the man who definitely has a beer just for the sake of warmth, Jake Miller. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
What I don't have up top, I have to make up for. So
If I didn't shave for 6 years, I would look slightly bushier than what I am right now. Like I can't. I don't have this good.
If I didn't cut my head hair for 6 years, I would,
never have this.
So.
That's fair.
The good Lord giveth and the good Lord taketh away.
So we are into October, and since we are doing October, we're doing scary movies, all scary / horror movies. Oh, I know, and you have the decorations for it. I don't change anything about my day, but I like it. It's you got the stuff in the background to go with it. So we're going to be doing scary movies all month, excuse me, and we're going to start today with 1982's The Thing, directed by John Carpenter. Written by Bill Lancaster, based on the novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. Itself was a remake of the movie The Thing from Another World from 1951. Stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, Keith David, Donald Moffat, co-starring T.K. Carter, David Clennon, Richard Dysart, Charles Hallahan, Peter Mahoney, Richard Messer, John Polis, and Thomas G. Waits. Opened on June 25th, 1982, 40-year anniversary this year. And it was a box office bomb. It made only $19.6 million on a $15 million budget. It was considered counterprogramming. Yeah, it was considered like it was too nihilistic for the time. Essentially, is what everybody kind of said. Is like E.T. was in theaters, and everybody's like, "Yeah, E.T." And this is kind of the mood they were in. And then The Thing came along, and they're like, "Nope, not the same." And so, very, very little box office. Small nominations for stuff. Nothing big. Did get a Razzie nomination for the worst musical score. I'm offended. That's part of what I liked about it. But okay, Jake, this is exciting because the Rotten Tomatoes spread, I don't know if you saw this one, 83% for critics, so pretty respectable, 92 for audience. So audiences actually liked it better than critics did. But we are not in agreement about this movie. I think this movie is almost a masterpiece, and Jake hated it.
Almost a masterpiece?
Yes, Jake, yes. It's so good. So we're in for a fun episode to start off this month.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, The Thing. The Thing is it's a pretty bare bones plot, but I'll get into it pretty quick. So there is a group of researchers in Antarctica set in 1982. A group helicopter pilot McCready, which is Kurt Russell, the various people in that research place. The film starts, a helicopter is chasing a sled dog and shooting at it, and the dog eventually makes it to this research outpost. For some reason, they have to kill the guy, I guess, because trying to kill the dog, I guess, did shoot a guy in the leg. So they kill the guy, and they're like, okay, well, what the hell was that about? Okay, there are these Norwegians. They go check it out, and they find all these weird things under the ice. Dead guy, killed himself, all these different various things. So when they get back, the dog actually is an alien. They don't really ever call it a name or anything. It's able to assimilate other people by other organisms essentially perfectly. It kills the organism and then can recreate it perfectly. This is discovered by a series of it transforms. They see the dog transform as it's about to assimilate the other dogs, and then it slowly starts to pick away at the rest of the group. And then Kurt Russell and being McCready is kind of has to take charge and be like, okay, well, this is going to be a problem. And at the end of the day, then nobody really lives. It's it's a very like yeah, though a lot of people die in gruesome ways, a lot of people die in different ways, and bad dog movie because it's like dead dogs and dogs doing like getting shot at dogs, and you don't really know what's going on. All right, Jake, give it to so you didn't like it at all.
No.
So what was the problem? What was the big thing that you were just like, what is this? Were you couldn't connect with it, or just didn't find it scary? It wasn't realistic.
It wasn't scary, and there was just it just a typical like cheesy scary movie to me.
Yeah,
is what it came across. I mean, there's moments where just calling out super unrealistic stuff, and like, and I mean, I get it, it's a movie about aliens. It's not, but I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. Yeah, I will say, like, at the first, I'm like, man, fuck Norwegians. They want to kill all our dogs.
So yeah, because there's no preface to what's going on. You just go in, you're just like, okay, there's these Norwegians shooting at a dog, and that's all you know.
A lot of Norwegians hate dogs. But now, having seen it, I will give it credit. I will give this movie credit. If a Norwegian shows up at my door today and tells me I gotta kill my dog, I might take his word for it.
Okay, so there's been a
could be an alien.
So there is a fan site for the thing. It's called Outpost 31, named after the Antarctic outpost. And somebody who knows Norwegian translated what they actually said. The guy gets out and he says, "Get the hell away. It's not a dog. It's a thing. It's imitating a dog. It's not real. Get away, idiots." Like, okay,
nice.
Well, it's like, that's a very straightforward thing to say. Whenever you watch the end of the movie, you're like, oh yeah, like that Norwegian guy shooting. It's like, why did he shoot that guy in the leg and not really give a crap about it? It's like, oh, that's why. Okay, cool. Like,
yeah, he wasn't just a Swedish chef from Sesame Street.
I have to shoot a dog. Yeah.
I have to shoot your dog.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
And I think about 3 times somebody's like, yeah, the Swedes is like they're Norwegian. Like they do it 3 times. Yeah. We did it ourselves.
Kurt Russell keeps doing it. Yeah.
So, okay. So just in general, okay. So me and you, we've lived in Texas the majority of our lives. The only other place we've ever lived of any other besides Texas is the Middle East. And needless to say, we are hotter. We are accustomed to the hotter weather. It's what we've lived in our whole lives. Even in the parts of Texas that we do live in that get snow, it's not prevalent enough to where we're like, yeah, we know snow. No, that's out of the ordinary. So how much of this movie were you just like, this looks miserable just for the sake of cold?
Yeah, I hate the cold. Yeah. Man, I hate being cold. Yeah, I can work all day out in 115 degrees or something like that. But
it's what we're used to. Yeah.
But if it's 15 degrees and I have to go work outside, I'm like, I don't know about that.
So you've had both extremes. You've had, especially in your time as a police officer, you're obviously outside a lot. So I mean, okay. So here's the question from your side as the police officer. Now, not outside doing stuff, running, chasing, whatever. In your car, do you want to be in your car in the beating heat, or do you want to be in your car in the dead cold? What would your preference be? I mean, the majority of your time on patrol, you would be like in a car. So
Mhm.
which is the preference between the two? Like, as far as like, I know you just don't like cold in general, but in your car, you're like, oh, I'm nice and cozy in here and it's freezing cold outside. Or you're in your car, like blasting AC. Which one is the preference?
No, both. It's just not being in the element. I mean,
I get
yeah,
it.
being in a climate controlled environment is always preferable to not,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. I know what
But
you mean.
I don't know. I always handled the heat better
Mhm.
than I did the cold. So
Yeah, it's what we're accustomed to. I get it. I mean, it makes sense. So yes, this movie is about aliens. Yes, this
Mhm.
movie is about, kind of all that thing that has to go with it. But I mean, the bigger aspect of what this movie is really about, it's about paranoia and who
Mhm.
and you're like, okay, well, yes, the alien is the threat, but it's, I don't know if you're who you say you are and who all that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed that aspect of the film. It's not just like, yeah, the
Mhm.
alien's the thing, but like, how many people actually die because of non-alien things? A couple. Like, it's not as
Yeah.
simple as, yeah, like the Norwegian pilot shot by a guy who was not an alien, and he was not an alien, and all that kind of stuff. And then
Mhm.
the guy who lunges at it because of the dogs.
Mhm.
So did you ever have a feeling of what was going? You're like, okay, I have a like were you ever on board with it, or were you from the jump you're just like, I don't know what's going on here, and I've never really been on board with it?
Yeah. No, I think I was on board with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I really tried to give it a shot, but I mean, I would say, I will say, I think paranoia is uh, a big factor in this movie,
Mm.
and something that I thought about was, what if everyone just went nuts up there
Yeah, I mean, what
and
the
just started taking each other out and saying, "Oh, you're the alien now, and
one of
you're
the
the."
one of the first things they said is like, man, where that Norwegian guy just comes shooting everybody, what's that about? And it's like, cabin fever, could just going a little nuts. And the chef, the cook comes in and goes, hey, it could be, you're down here for any amount of time, you could go nuts. And like,
Yeah, yeah. And so that kind of, actually, that was kind of more of an entertaining thought.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it's kind of like, what if there is no alien? There
yeah,
is no possessed dog or anything, and these guys just went bonkers because they
yeah,
spent too much time in Antarctica,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I know you said something to me whenever you kind of said we were going to be covering this movie, is, a lot of times the scary, the big
It'll be teased.
reveal of
Yeah.
the monster doesn't come out for a while, and that's kind of the more scary part. Really, this monster comes out
Pretty quick.
pretty quick, but I would argue, I think the monster is in everyone's head. You see all the paranoia. I mean, yes, you've seen this graphic, gross monster and everything like that, but really each other's conflicts and paranoia and not being able to trust each other and not being able to almost trust yourself,
I mean,
like
yeah,
that's really the biggest monster is.
and even if you look at it like, as far as like, okay, everybody's there looking at this dog transform, and even if you're looking at it, you can't understand what's going on.
Mm,
Like, there's no like, okay, this is happening, this is logical. There's like, no, 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 nothing about this makes any sense. And every piece of information they get more just makes it more confusing, because these guys are not,
yeah.
they don't know this kind of stuff. They just kind of have to surmise it's like, I hope this is the case. I assume this is the case based off of evidence I've seen. But it's not like, okay, I've been studying this stuff for years. It's like, well, this has to make sense, because if it doesn't, what else does nothing about this makes any sort of sense. And
Right.
whenever your brain can't make that connection, it just goes wild, and it just leads more to the paranoia.
Yeah. I think in terms of conflict, I mean, man versus himself or
Yeah. It's always
man
a good
versus
one.
man is
Yeah.
always more intriguing than maybe man versus nature
Yeah.
or some obvious external conflict. But
Yeah.
yeah.
See, it's really interesting because having it be Antarctica and having nobody else around besides who's in there, you're like, okay, well, the man versus nature thing is not necessarily playing in directly, but at the same time, indirectly, it's like, okay, this is all in the background. We can't just have it happen. Like we can't just go outside and be like, let's go and leave. You're in Antarctica. The only way you can go anywhere is through like the snowcats or through, helicopters and all that kind of stuff. So I get that part. All right. So you had talked about the effects and how it's like you got to tease out the monster, and that's not the case here. The effects were very vivid and very quickly and pretty consistent. So did you see it all as like cheesy 80s horror? Or, I mean, one of my favorite things about it is it's all practical effects. It's not computer generated because it's 1982 and computer generated doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah. No, I did think that. Yeah, this is old school special effects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this ain't just jumping on a computer. And I mean, not to take away from very talented people that can do amazing things with CGI, but
Sure.
Yeah, this is back, when people had to mold plastics and create fake blood and all that kind of stuff. So I will say the special effects were pretty good for me being -2 at the time that this was created. You being -4.
Yeah, exactly. This is well before we were born. Yeah. So okay, so the effects in general, I always think of there's always the two scenes I think of when I think of effects. Like I remember slightly like the end scene with the big thing at the end and the dogs whenever they first transform. But the two things I always think of is the scene when they're given CPR and he's given CPR and his arms get chopped off, and then the head detaches, and then whenever they're doing the tests, the blood test. So my question would be, would you rather be in the room whenever you see the guy? So your two choices: you have to be in the room the entire time, you can't run out, while this guy chops off somebody else's arms through defibrillation, grows another one, and eventually has to be burned to death. Or your other option is to be tied to the end of that bench while the other guy's transforming. One of the most realistic things in the entire movie is whenever that thing is going wild and the two on the other side of the bench are going, just get me off of this thing.
The complete helplessness, I think, would be the scariest thing. Is you're just tied up and
and even those two in both cases, after they pass the test, they're like, okay, I passed the test, get me the fuck out of this chair. Like,
untie me, you fuck.
Yeah. It's all fun. So I can't imagine you see a lot of Wilford Brimley in your life and be like, oh man, the diabetes guy, he's definitely the bad guy or the good guy. And it's kind of muffled. So there's a lot of unanswered questions with this movie that you never really get a good answer. Like, who was the first person who was assimilated? When were people assimilated? There's did the one guy burn himself to death? There's a ton of those kind of questions all over the place. Now I know I was thinking, it's like, okay, you're going to be like totally on board with this film and we could talk about this kind of stuff, and you're just like, who cares? It sucks.
Well, and I think another problem I had with it is I didn't know even why they were there.
Yeah, it's not.
Why are you in Antarctica? Like, I mean, I know like Kurt Russell's like, a U.S. research pilot, or it says something like that on his helicopter.
Yeah.
Something, but they don't establish why all these people are down there anyways.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
all have their roles, but their roles are fairly undefined. Like, okay, it's like you got a biologist and you got a backup biologist, the cook, the mechanic, the chief mechanic, the physician, geologist, meteorologist, dog handler. Like it's like there's not like a clear thing. Like
they
it's
never
like,
establish a mission for even
yeah.
in Antarctica.
Yeah,
So,
and it's it's one of those things where I think you have to be able to put people in a situation where they're completely desolate and they have to get there, but it's not necessarily something that is a reasoning behind it. This is the 80s were one of those things. It's like, oh, the 80s, sure, there are people in Antarctica. Why? I don't know, they're down there, they're doing something. Like it's just kind of an excuse to get them isolated.
yeah.
Like, I think it's one of those type of things, but still, like, okay, so I'll say I love this movie. I told you this. I loved it the first time. I loved it this time. I think it's a perfect example of expert tension and nihilistic and the cool special effects and paranoia and all that kind of stuff. And there's so much more you can read into it. I understand now. I don't really understand how you like hated it, but we'll get into that a little later.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I wouldn't say I hated it,
yeah.
but yeah, not a fan.
Okay. So, the film goes through pretty much everybody dies. Either somebody's like pulled off at the corner or somebody's blown up. You assume they're a thing. At the end of the film, Kurt Russell blows everything up and he's kind of laying there laying there in the snow, and in walks Keith David, not David Keith, a different actor. Keith David Keith. One's white, one's black. This one is the black one, Keith David. He stands there and he's like, hey, I guess we got it. We're here in the cold. Guess we're gonna die. And Kurt Russell goes, yep. The end.
Well, yeah, I know. That's what I thought is like at the end. I was like, well, even say you beat the monster, you're still stuck in Antarctica.
Yeah, there's not much whole salute. Like, and I think that's the idea. Like, you're trying to.
Why
kill
even
it.
bother surviving? You ain't making it off.
Well,
I mean,
the point
the
was,
radios are gone and shit.
yeah, and the point of death was this, like, okay, well, the thing has to die, then you can't, you just have to destroy it. It's like, okay, where us two's there, and you have to figure that out. But the big question a lot of people are still debating 40 years later is Childs, is he a thing? Like, is he a part of it? I mean, like he said, and Kurt Russell says the last thing is like, well, even if you are, nothing I can really do to stop you if you want to kill me. So,
Right.
All right, Jake, I know you weren't a big fan of this movie and you had a very wonderful breakout of how much you didn't like The Lobster. And so I've heard there's another aspect that you want to add a little more to this.
Here's the thing, like, I'm interested in genealogy, right?
Sure.
I've done a lot of research into our own family history and finding out where our roots are. So after watching this film, I mean, countless Freedom of Information Acts, FOIA requests, and I've figured it out.
Okay.
And so I'd like to provide a illustration for our audience to better demonstrate.
Okay, let's do this. This is wonderful.
Genealogy of a bad movie.
Okay, so this is a piggyback off of your drug-filled orgy in Reno, that was from our lobster episode. Okay, so please go ahead.
All right, folks. So you have gods and generals here.
A
Okay.
a 4-hour disaster. Yes.
hmm And then you have lady killers.
The worst film of Tom Hanks's career.
hmm You have the lighthouse.
A film I like that you cannot stand.
hmm And then you have Jurassic World Dominion.
The film that created this podcast, essentially. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So as I've previously discussed
Yes.
with our audience, they had a drug-fueled orgy in Reno, Nevada.
Yes. Correct.
And that created the lobster.
Yes. I really wish this is like a meteorology illustration, but we're a little underfunded these days. So yeah, sorry, continue.
Right. No, this is my kids.
Okay. Okay.
But so the lobster was created. The lobster, being that this is a scary movie,
Okay.
all right, it got with Scream,
Okay.
the original with Courtney Cox and what's his name?
Nev Campbell and David Arquette. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So they actually met in rehab.
Okay.
They were trying to get cleaned up,
Okay.
trying to do better, but at first their relationship was completely platonic.
As is supposed to be in rehab, correct? Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to fuck in there.
Okay.
And but as soon as they both graduated, they did fine.
Sure.
And they got out, but then they kind of linked up. They both relapsed.
Codependency happens. Okay. So they relapse.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
They relapsed. And then they actually had sex in the outdoor restroom of the Arby's in Wichita Falls.
And if you've
Texas.
ever driven through Wichita Falls, you know exactly what Arby's we're talking about. So yes. Okay. So
you have to get the key from the manager, and then you got to go outside.
okay.
But they did it. They were committed, and yeah. And so they actually procreated, and then it made the thing.
This is your coup de grace of genealogy research. I mean, who cares if you're related to if you're related to the Queen of England 7 times removed, who cares about that? The thing was made because of sex in an Arby's restroom in Wichita Falls. I mean, your research isn't
deniable.
You're it's like you can want to deny it all you want. It's facts are facts, right? I mean,
that's the way it happened, folks. I mean, I've poured through county records, all vital statistics. I mean, but that's the way it happened, whether you like it or not.
Well, I appreciate that, Jake. Thank you for that little bit of information. That's what
you're welcome, Ben.
So let's move on to this week's poll for a dumbass. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. Today we have the one, the only Mr. Kurt Russell as our man, the bearded one himself. Child actor. We're gonna go through. We're gonna miss a lot of his early stuff because did a lot of Disney stuff. Made his really broke through with a TV version of he played Elvis. It's kind of really where he rose to prominence. I believe directed by John Carpenter actually. But so after that he kind of starts to go do a little more movies, makes a little here and there, does some small stuff. His big movie breakthrough was actually again with John Carpenter in 1981, Escape from New York.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, it says plays Snake Plissken. It's a dark movie. It's a stereotypical like, okay, what's a goofy 80s plot? It's like, well, New York's a prison and we have to recruit a prisoner to save the president. Like,
of course,
as is one to do. I'm not going to include this, but just wanted to have this as a note. In 1980, the other film in 1981, he was the voice of Copper in The Fox and the Hound.
No shit.
No, it's one of those little things. You're like, hey, Fox and the Hound's one of those.
That's
like,
probably his best work.
I mean, it's great. I mean, pretty good voice.
Our grandma's dogs were named after.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, followed up with the next year with The Thing. So this is 1982. Right. So, and then 1983 kind of starts to get more mainstream. But a movie, a successful movie, you probably know more for the kind of the jokes behind it. But the film Silkwood with Meryl Streep, it's based on the activist, I think Karen Silkwood. I could be wrong on that. I'm going to look it up real quick just so I don't sound like an idiot. But that's the one where
you sound like an idiot no matter what.
This is true. It is Karen Silkwood. I appreciate that. So it's that's the movie where Meryl Streep works for a nuclear power plant and tries to expose it, and she gets exposed to stuff, and she's like, they're forcibly giving her a shower, and she, it's just kind of that's kind of where the cliche of, I've exposed to radiation, I need a shower and a scrub down from. Okay, so that was nice.
Well, it sounds great.
Yeah, I've actually never seen it, but I've heard nothing but good things.
Oh, okay.
So he does a little smaller stuff. A film I don't. So we're going to go on a run here that I have very, very low expectations for you've seen. I want to see if you have heard of any of these. Big Trouble in Little China.
I've heard of it,
but you haven't
never seen it.
Okay. How about Overboard?
I've seen it.
You've seen Overboard. Okay. That's the
Goldie Hawn.
Yes. Not the film they met on, but the film, it's kind of just, you look back on that and it's like, oh, that's kind of where it cemented their love. They've been together for 40 years, still not married. God bless you. Like, who needs the government red tape?
Who cares?
Okay. Followed by, how about 1988's Tequila Sunrise with Mel Gibson and Michelle Pfeiffer? Not a bad movie. How about another stupid 80s action movie with Sylvester Stallone, Tango and Cash?
I've heard of it. Never
heard of it. Okay.
I never watched it.
Okay. Now we're on to stuff that I know you're on board with. 1991's the man playing Bull McCaffrey, Backdraft.
Awesome.
A classic in our household. It's one of those.
It's a great one.
It's a great one. One of those you see, you're like, man, it's a good brother movie too. Very good brother movie.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And then, and we've got an uncle that is a retired firefighter, and so
always had that kind of connection there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool movie. Good movie.
So the following year,
not realistic, but
no, very not exactly. And also one of those you're like, yeah, Backdraft. Who was it? It was a Baldwin brother. Which Baldwin? Was it Steven? Was it Alec? No, it's actually a different Baldwin brother. It's so see, I can't even think of it. It's Zeppo, William Baldwin.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what a mess.
That's his only thing. He's like, I've got Backdraft, guys. He's like at Thanksgiving.
Well, he was in Backdraft.
Family.
He was in Backdraft, and he was in this erotic thriller with Sharon Stone called Sliver. It's terrible. That's pretty much all he was ever really known for. All right. How about the next year? 1982's Unlawful Entry, the quintessential bad cop movie.
No,
it's one of my wife's. It's one of my wife's guilty pleasures. How about 1992's Captain Ron?
No,
he's a drunken kind of sailor man. It's him and I want to say Martin Short. Yeah, Martin Short. Not a bad movie. It's fun. He's having a fun time. Okay, let's get back on track. 1993's Tombstone.
Dude.
One of the classics.
Man, one of my top fives.
So Tombstone is a really interesting film in and of itself, just because of the kind of the production behind it. It was absolutely chaotic production. So they essentially the guy who wrote the movie, and they're so impressed with it. It's like, well, it should direct the movie too. And he started directing, and they went, wow, you have no idea what you're doing. And essentially fired him really quick.
You're fired.
Yeah, they fired him, and they're like scrambling to try to get something together. And Kurt Russell pretty much directed the rest of the movie. George P. Cosmatos is the official director of it, but essentially Kurt Russell was the official one. By the way, authentic mustache on Kurt Russell in that movie.
Oh yeah, epic.
That thing is thick. That guy can really have some facial hair between Tombstone and this movie. Man, he really knows how to grow it. How about 1994 Stargate? I know you're a big sci-fi guy.
Oh no, I mean I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I never watched it. Yeah.
How about the best case scenario of terrible 1996 action movies? Executive Decision.
Executive Decision.
A plane is being hijacked. I want to say it has a nuclear weapon on board, and Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal have to go into a plane and get into the plane, and Steven Seagal dies in 15 minutes. It's great, but it's
that sounds like the only good part of that movie.
No, it's actually a pretty solid action movie. Young Halle Berry, good movie. I really appreciated it. I won't include this. I won't include the sequel to Escape from New York because it was terrible. It's called Escape from L.A. How about the film Breakdown from 1997? He is a man who stops on the side. You'll like this you'll appreciate this as a guy on the road. Stops on the side of the road with his wife. He goes to the bathroom, comes out, his wife's gone, and he spends like the entire day going like trying to figure out what happened. And it's a really interesting movie, Breakdown. From 1997. How about the Kuwait favorite, Jake? 3,000 Miles to Graceland. Do you remember that one? Elvis impersonators, him and Kevin Costner, and they're trying to rob a bank. They're trying to rob a casino.
Yes.
It's a very not good movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just remember.
But I've seen it.
Yeah. I remember it specifically watching it overseas, but regardless. All right. If you haven't seen this is one you definitely are going to put on your list. From, I think it's probably his best performance. 2002's Dark Blue.
Dark Blue.
He plays a corrupt Los Angeles police officer right before the Rodney King verdict.
Okay. I hadn't seen that one.
Oh, that's a real good one. It's kind of like putting his own morality on trial for himself, and then trying to come into terms with all. It's a really good movie. I highly recommend. It's a rough watch, but highly recommend it.
Dark Blue. It's on my list.
Okay, so from 2004, maybe his most commercially successful film previous to Marvel movies. How about 2004's Miracle? The Miracle on Ice hockey team.
Yes.
I haven't seen it. I haven't.
No.
I
thought it was pretty good.
It's one of those things I keep waiting for it to ever be on TV, and I just isn't. I don't know why.
All right.
Yeah, I know it's one of those Disney sports movies. It is what it is. But
yeah.
How about the remake of the Poseidon Adventure? Nicely remade, smart name to remake it, called Poseidon.
No,
it's not. It's very not good. The more I look at it, the more he's in a lot of crap.
He's in a lot of junk. Yeah, he really is.
And I like Kurt Russell. I've never not liked Kurt. Every time I'm like, hey, Kurt Russell, yeah, like.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. He is in a lot of crap.
How about I know how much you love Tarantino. How about 2007's Death Proof? He plays a stuntman who kills women with his car.
No.
Not surprising. Pretty good in that one. All right, Jake. 2 in 2015. I know you've seen them both. Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah.
Ooh. You want to talk about a rough
good.
watch?
It's good though.
It's a good. It's good. It's slow, nice, slow burn Western. He's really good in it, but man, there's some rough parts
Yeah.
of that movie.
There are. Yeah, it is. Yeah, make sure the kids are not in the room.
Mm-mm.
Yep.
And then another Western in 2015. How about The Hateful Eight?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen it.
It's probably Tarantino's worst movie. Probably.
I didn't like it.
There's some parts
And-
I really like, but it's
In
not
general, I'm a Tarantino fan
Yeah.
in general, and I really had high expectations for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sat down and watched it one night, and I was like, nah.
Just didn't get there. It was too
No.
much. Yeah, I agree. All right. We're only going to do we've already discussed how you're not much of a franchise guy, but have you seen? He is now in the Fast and Furious universe. Have you ever seen any of those movies with him? No, I'm going to lump all those together.
I've watched one Fast and the Furious, the first one.
The first
That
one
is it.
I've seen more than I'd like to. I can't say I love them, but yeah. And then you're not much of a Marvel guy. He was the bad guy in the second Guardians of the Galaxy film. So I guess you can include that one as well. Okay, so the last one that I'll include on this list. How about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
I've heard good things, but I haven't seen it yet.
He has a very small part in it, but he's good in it. Like, obviously, he's never bad in it. But I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, great film. Love a lot of things about it. Love, the alternate history, the vibe of 70s. It's probably my favorite Leonardo DiCaprio performance. And
yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
DiCaprio's great. Brad Pitt's incredible, and just everybody.
Leo and Brad Pitt, yeah,
great, yeah. Might be a film we eventually have to do on this podcast, but yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah. I'll have to watch out.
That's not that was a little better than I was expecting. I mean, like you said, like you had very little early, but you had 8 out of 21, so not too bad overall. So Kurt Russell, I know he's swimming in money and he's married, or he's with Goldie Hawn. His son is becoming a much more prominent actor these days. So yeah, by all means.
What's his daughter's name?
He has 2 children.
Or is it Goldie Hawn's?
It's Goldie Hawn's daughter, Kate Hudson. She considers him her father, but biologically no. They have a child named Wyatt Russell.
Oh, you didn't mention Deep Horizon.
I did not mention Deepwater Horizon.
They were both in that.
You've seen Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, yeah, and I forget. I always forget about Deepwater Horizon. Watching and be like, man, this is just a lot. And then you watch it, you're like, oh man, this was a really lot. And it's really kind of at the end, you're like, wow, that's okay. And then I forgot about it every time. Though I liked it every time. When I've seen it, it's been enjoyable, but it's not something I ever remember for some reason.
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought it was really, really well done. And what's her name? Kate Hudson?
Kate Hudson, yes. I don't think she was in Deepwater Horizon, was she?
Yeah, I think she was Mark Wahlberg's wife.
Oh, really? Oh, well, look at that. See what I know? Yeah, you're right. Okay. I didn't know that. Nice. They don't share any, I don't think they share any scenes, but yeah, I think that's fun to know. I didn't even know they were, I haven't seen Deepwater Horizon in so long. I was like, okay, I remember Kurt Russell being in it. He has a mustache again. Mark Wahlberg. And then at the end, Mark Wahlberg has a panic attack after being confronted by, I want to say either Trace Adkins or Tim McGraw.
It's Trace Adkins.
Trace Adkins. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was one of the two. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Deepwater Horizon. So that's not too bad. 9 out of 21. A little better than I was expecting. Well, good.
I was fixing to say, put another point on my board, boy.
All right, Jake. Every episode, instead of staring the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's just trivia. Sometimes it is not. Jake, is it that time?
You're in the hot box. We're in spooky season, folks.
I'm in the hot box.
You're in the Halloween hot box.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. Do you like jigsaw puzzles?
The actual jigsaw puzzles I actually do like. The two main problems with jigsaw puzzles is, one, I don't want an easy one. I want one that's going to take months, essentially. Like it needs to be a significant amount of time. The other problem with it is it takes up a crap load of room to do that. Like it's like you can't have a jigsaw.
You have to have a whole table.
You can't have a jigsaw puzzle and be like, okay, now we're gonna eat dinner in an hour. It's like, no,
right.
Like, that's so. But I do like doing them. It's kind of keeps you sharp. I like them.
Right.
It's a nice.
You ever
segue.
been?
Nice segue.
You ever
like
been snowed in?
I have, in Amarillo, Texas. Whenever the house we used to live in, it was a newer development whenever we moved there, and the houses across the street were still being developed, so there's empty plots. And Amarillo, famously having very high winds, we had very heavy snowfall, and the winds caused I think drifts up to about 6 feet. So I remember that one. That was a good one. That was a real good one. I remember I was able to walk to my mailbox and I could touch it with my toe. I could just kick it right there. So yeah. Besides that, do you remember being unable to go see our great grandparents? We were on a trip to Hope, Arkansas to see our great grandparents. And we're driving. This is when we were living in the Permian Basin, and we get to some part of Texas, and it's snowing so bad. They're like, "Nope, you got to turn around," and they wouldn't let us go.
Yeah, they closed the highway.
They closed the highway, and we were so disappointed.
I do remember that.
But I remember that specifically. That's living in Texas, you don't get a whole lot of that kind of snow weather. But I mean, once in a blue moon,
right? Yep. All right. Well, what would you say your favorite Kurt Russell film is? Which one out of them? Well, we already went through them.
Went through a lot of them. Okay, so if I'm talking about like what's my favorite Kurt Russell performance or my favorite Kurt Russell movie, like when I think of kind of his persona, it doesn't really get beyond Tombstone. Tombstone is essentially like, okay, what does Kurt Russell do well? And how does he make everything work for him the best? And his megawatt personality, Tombstone's it. Like he gets the lines.
Be a tough guy that takes charge.
Yep, and he doesn't want to. The
reluctance. Hero.
Yes. That's probably the number one. I would say my favorite performance is probably Dark Blue. I love him in Dark. He's so good in Dark Blue. It's so. That'd be my favorite. That'd be my favorite performance, but Tombstone's the number one when I think of.
All right. Do you believe in aliens?
I do, in a very broad sense. Like I don't like. I think it's naive to assume that we're the only living organism in the entire known universe.
Right.
I think it's just a factor. Personally, I just think it's a factor. It's too big. Like it's too far to go. And even if there's a bizarro version of us on 6 billion light years away, they'll never get here, just like we'll never get there. So yeah. So aliens, I think there's other living things out in the world, but it's, as far as like have aliens come here, probably not.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, it's like, because obviously this movie starts out with a spaceship crashing. And I think anyone that came here would probably want to just go back home. Probably.
It's like, okay,
never mind.
It's like, okay,
tell me. We went looking for intelligent life and we didn't find it.
Okay, hello, I'm from another planet. Tell me about your world, and everybody's looking at him like this.
Right. Yeah.
It's like what's going on? Nobody's talking.
It's going to be great on TikTok.
Exactly.
He's like, I'm from a different planet. Hang on. Hang on. This filter would be perfect for you.
I love the idea of yeah, Instagram filter aliens. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. All right. This is my final one.
Okay.
But road flares are used
Yes.
quite a bit in this movie for lighting and
Yeah.
catching people on fire and stuff
Yes.
like that. Do you know how to light a road flare? If I handed you a road flare, would you be able to light it?
I think I could probably figure it out, but offhand, I mean, so every time I look at everything I know about road flares, I know from movies. Like, is it The Rock where it's Nicolas Cage and he just kind of slams the bottom and it starts going off? Probably not. Is it the Jurassic Park, but they never really show him lighting it? Is it like a screw at the bottom?
No, most of them, it's just a plastic cap that comes off, and
Okay.
it's just like just a match
Okay.
surface on the head of the cap, and then corresponding surface on one end, and you just
so literally
just
just, and it's okay, nice. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't think I have a road flare in my car, but I mean, it's good to know if that ever comes up.
Either try that or call Nicolas Cage.
I say, but it looks so much cooler. And having them fly up. So I mean, yeah, that's what I always think of. But that makes at least logistical sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Well, I mean, it takes up less room in your trunk than keeping Nick Cage back there.
I have a feeling you've lit a road flare or two in your time.
A couple.
Yeah.
One or two.
Yeah. Okay.
My
Makes
pants
sense.
have been caught on fire by then.
So is there so do you associate a road flare with a certain type of temperature? Because whenever I think of road flares on the side of the road, for some reason it just seems like it should be cold, dark and cold.
Well, I lit a lot of road flares, but yeah, a lot of wrecks and stuff like that. But yeah, usually when it's icy and cold, that's when a lot of wrecks happen. And
that's the problem with living in the place that we do, because it's so warm all the time. Anytime there's any sort of ice, nobody has any idea what they're doing. Like, I've had friends who've lived in the north and came down here. They're like, they don't ice the roads, or they don't salt the roads. It's like, no, they don't salt the roads. It snows 2 days out of a year. Like, why would they salt the roads? Like
they try, but honestly, they don't really know what they're doing.
They literally have like salt shakers outside. That's their equivalent of what the salting roads would be. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, good to know. So folks, if you ever have to light a road flare, now you know.
Now you know. All right, Ben.
All right.
You're free to go.
Okay, Jake. Here's where we disagree the big time. What is your film rating for The Thing? And I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it just as much this time as I did
this
the last
is one
time.
of those. Yeah.
So we don't mix. See, whenever I looked up,
you went this way, I went that.
Whenever I did the research for the Rotten Tomatoes, and it was like, 83% critics, 92 audience, and Jake's like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, that's usually the exact opposite. It's like, okay, well, yeah, well, we don't have to agree all the time. It's a little more fun when we do, because otherwise, how would you do the genealogy of a bad movie?
Right, exactly. But I will say, and I usually try not to do any research on our movies or anything like that. And I mean, of one that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
And, so I can just kind of cold open. But I actually did look something up. And whenever it came out in 82, it was listed by critics as instant junk.
Yep.
And a wretched excess.
Yes. People did not like this movie when it came out. Didn't make a whole lot of money. I think it debuted in like 8th at the box office. It just did not work for anybody. I've loved it ever since I've ever saw it the first time, and I'll love it the next time I see it. So
yeah, well, I don't get it, but folks, moral of the story: take care of your diabetes, because I think that's ultimately the monster in this.
Okay, Jake,
that's what takes everyone out.
Okay, so I just thought of something thanks to you. I didn't realize this. Okay, so Wilford Brimley being in this movie and Kurt Russell being in this movie, how old was Wilford Brimley when this movie came out?
I'd say 60.
You think Wilford Brimley was 60 years old when this movie came out?
I think.
He was. That's whatever you believe.
Maybe closer to 50. I don't know. Between 50 and 60, I'll just say that.
He was. Hold on, let me double check it before I say it. This is 1982. He was. Okay, so if he was, he was 48.
Jesus Christ.
He was born in 1934. This came out in 82. So yeah, 48 years old whenever this movie came out.
Golly.
He has looked old his entire life.
Well, I can relate.
made his debut in the not his, he was uncredited, but he was in the original True Grit with John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Still died 2 years ago, but still, a lot of different stuff he's been in throughout the years. But yeah.
Well, my favorite performance from him was as the Postmaster General in Seinfeld. Whenever Kramer boycotted,
that was pretty great. Yes, and
that's his best performance.
And under interrogation, it's like Mr. Kramer. Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. All right. Anything else from you, Jake, for this episode?
No, sir.
Okay. That just about does it for this episode of the Film Critic, the Common Man. Thank you so much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at NebIsBen, on Letterboxd at Neb810, on Instagram at Ben Miller Movies. Check out my website, icecreamforfreaks.com. You can follow my other writing on the Film Experience and Cinema Scholars. Just finished up my 1992 Oscar blind spots. I'm all caught up in 1992, a film year with a lot of crap and a lot of pretty good stuff. You can also find me on other pods on the David Thugos Podcasting. Should have a podcast coming out later this week. Got a lot of new reviews of movies coming out this week. Jake, where can the people find you? Outpost 31?
A research camp in Antarctica, baby. If you can make it down there, you can get me.
Okay, so is there a part of you now? Obviously, you don't want to shoot a dog, but there's a part of you that wanted to shoot at something from a helicopter.
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah, they have hog hunts out here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that might be like a 40th birthday request or something. Yeah.
Well, if you can find Jake, then you kind of deserve it. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Critic Comment Pod. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. We'll catch you next week. We will be going into a much more fun territory. We will be talking about Shaun of the Dead, the perfect blend of horror and comedy. Thank you so very much for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?